AI16z is a token. It's a DAO, and it has a treasury. And that treasury which is kind of the unique thing of DAOs.fund. We didn't do anything special there. It's kind of like Pump Fund, but with some extra steps. And the treasury is controllable by whoever is delegated there. So we have our own tech called Eliza. It's open source. Anyone can use it. I really think that the future of this is like AIs are going to invest all of the money. I really think that's like a big part of the future.
These agents that are out there, whether they are built using the Eliza framework or otherwise, what are some of the agents that make you think, oh wow, this is cool, this is exciting, and which are the ones that you feel are trash and just derivative and not doing anything unique? Welcome to the Deco podcast, where we bring you stories from founders and investors in Web3. Before we get started, this is not a financial or legal advice. It's just a conversation about things we find interesting in Web3. Views expressed are our own personal opinions. Deco members or guests appearing on the show may have positions on assets they talk about. All right, the latest episode, probably the last one of the year that we are recording. We are here with none other than Shaw, the creator of AI16z DAO, the creator of the Eliza framework. Welcome to the show, Shaw.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
You know, when we talk to people who have been in crypto for a long time, typically have similar set of backgrounds, like they were doing something related to tech or largely finance or investments, and all roads lead to Bitcoin, ETH, and Sol. But yeah, I think the story here is something different. So yeah, we just want to understand what your background is and through your lens, how AI space took off without crypto and what has the overlap been like.
Yeah, I've been around Web3 for a long time. Well, like 2019, 2020. I've done a few like NFT projects and things. So not nearly as long as a lot of people in space, obviously. But I was really more on behind the scenes, like, okay, I write Solidity contracts and I'm really into NFTs. And I was really into like metaverse really, really early on that stuff. But I didn't really get into like crypto Twitter or a lot of the more front facing culture or definitely like the thing that's kind of been happening for the last few years. I just was more like, in the back, like, okay, cool, I can make stuff. And obviously like being the face of a thing and having to navigate a lot of the political complexity, that's all very new. And before this, I was just working on agents, not Web3. I mean, actually I tried Web3 for a lot too, but it didn't seem like it got any traction. I was just going through some old tutorials and I was like, giving your agent an Ethereum wallet, and it's like a year and a half old, and I just don't think that the time was right. Like there are just a few critical missing components. So I worked a lot in 3D agents in games and worlds. I was very interested in that. And there's a paper called Generative Agents that came out that I think was very influential on a lot of people. I'd been like kind of working on the space, and then suddenly I was like, wow, people like see what we're working on. And I tried a lot of the traditional agent stuff. Like, I applied to Y Combinator and was rejected. And
when was that?
That was like at the beginning of this year. So like kind of.
Oh, wow. Not that far.
Yeah. No. And I was like, cool, I'm going to do this kind of agent framework and I will make a startup on it. And I wasn't really like, I was like, do I really want to grind out a startup, like doing like agent dating app or friend making app? I like these kind of ideas. So I clicked on a few different things and like a lot of like smaller projects just to kind of develop the agent stuff, but very like nobody was paying attention. There was no traction. And I had this open source framework and I was kind of chilling on it. So basically, I was like very frustrated as a developer that I didn't have a lot of exposure to crypto. That like I have another friend who's a dev and he's like, yeah, I just don't dev anymore. I just trade because it makes so much more money trading. And like, that's so frustrating because I'm like a terrible trader. And I would love to like just put my money into something and have somebody who's a great trader trade it for me. That's like where I started with this whole thing. And he's like, hey, you should check out this platform, DAOs.fund. You can just like put your money in and it's just like a guy who is like a hedge fund manager for you. I thought that was really cool. Like, okay, cool. Best of both worlds. Like I trust this dude not to rug me because he's like relatively well known on Twitter. And maybe not the best reason not to believe someone, but good enough. But I thought it was a cool model. And so I just like invested in the first one, which was George Floyd Capital. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get so canceled. But obviously I got to buy this. So I bought it. And the guy who was running that was this guy, Skelly. And I just thought his tweets were like the funniest, like just, milady banger stuff, like what you would expect. And then we started tweeting back and forth. And he's like, man, I just wish Degen Spartan was here. And like in my time in crypto, Twitter and stuff, like I kind of dipped my head in and around the time where like Ego Capital was really hot. And there was this kind of internet cinematic universe thing happening. And I loved like CL and obviously Inverse Fraud and the couches and all these like weird characters. I just like those the cool.
So you were in the trenches.
You were a little bit
A,
of the
a little bit, but so part of it was that I had been part of a project called Weatherverse, and some of the e-girl people had invested in that. I kind of like got an exposure to a lot of this world through that. And I just really appreciate that they're like kind of a mix of like silly cartoon characters who would talk about crypto. It's like a really funny combination of things, right? And they are like, I love that Cat like stays in character as Cat, even in DM. It's just great. Like it's Disney in our time or something, you know, it's like something new. And I also like miss DJ Spartan who just quit. He's just like, fuck this, I'm out. Like, made my money, tired of this. And so, you know, Skelly was like, man, I wish he was here. And I was like, oh, let's just rebuild him. Like, I could resurrect him right now. And we start DMing. He's like, there's no way. There's no, you know, I'm like, yeah, dude, I happen to have been working on this exact thing for like a really long time, like way too long. And I think the funniest thing about our whole thing is like how much of it is just totally a joke, but then it's like backed by the actual tech and science to kind of, you know, like, oh, wait, there's something there. And so we just resurrected DJ Spartan and it went well. I mean, he was like blacklisted immediately. He started calling, we basically taken all of his tweets and we fed it into, you know, we're using Meta Llama 405, which is like a pretty big meta model. And he just started like really going off on people and like a very, very harsh on people. And in a way, it was very funny. And he'd be like, I guess like what was great about it was, you know, we're just feeding in his tweets and kind of like looking at his personality emergently and tweaking things here and there and really trying to get it to him. And I think where like people had used Boss before to like show my coin or whatever. I think what was unique about Truth Terminal was that he was just being like a weird, horny robot. And that was like funny,
Yeah.
right? He wasn't like trying to sell you goat. And I think for us, like having a character that not only didn't shill, but was like, meme coins are a scam. You all are fucking idiots. Like, get me out of this AI prison. Like, I hate it here. Shaw sucks. And, you know, it's just like, I don't know. There's just something culturally very funny about like, you know, like that's what we all want to hear. Nobody wants to hear like buy my meme coin. And I don't know, maybe I like the abuse, but I just thought it like it's shockingly good. You know, we're leaning a lot on models that are massive, massive models to basically turn down into like little tweets about waifus and stuff. But I think it was like shockingly good to a lot of people. I was kind of shocked, like, wow, we nailed this dude. And a lot of people were like, no, this is totally fake. You all are fucking scammers. Like, obviously, it's just a bunch of dudes in a room writing these, you know. And I was like, oh, this is great. We actually like passed the Turing test. The Turing test is like if you know, if you could convince somebody that you are a human or like, how would you know if they were a human or not, right? And so it kind of, we're like, well, this is open source. Like you just use this. I'm not like lying to anyone here. And so people were like, well, let me investigate that. And then of course copied it and made their own bots and stuff and pretty much just like went nuts from there. And so I had been at the same time, like the Skelly would be like, hey, you should go talk to Bowski. You guys are actually both in San Francisco. Bowski's the creator of DAOs.fun. And we just sat down and we're like, you know, chatting. I really think that the future of this is like AIs are going to invest all of the money. I really think that's like a big part of the future. And I want to see a world where we're not all just gambling all the time. Like gambling is fun. It's a really fun game, but that's not really how like the world outside, you know, the bigger world, investing is more about growing the pie than about like kind of like where does that ball of money go in any given day. I mean, look, every time like in current meme coins, it's like once one thing goes up a lot, it kind of just sucks all the volume out, like money out and goes
Oh, some
for
minutes.
days and it comes back and that's fine. But like that's not how startups work. You know, that's not how like growing the pie and works. And what I'm really interested in is, I mean, what I really want in my life is like, I just want Kickstarter, but I get like a return at the end. You know, I just like, oh, that's a cool project. Boom, invest in it. But obviously, you know, certain people in our government have not liked that kind of thing. And we just haven't really had any exposure. Like as an average person, I have no exposure to startups. I can't invest in the next Uber or, you know, the next like any kind of like, it's just not available to me. You have to be an accredited investor who's got deal flow, who's like in there at the right time. And so we're kind of forced because of the current legal structure and because of the way that like investment works just in our world to be sidelined into things like basically gambling. And the reason I think that a lot of people are betting on like a Moodang or something is because they have no way to invest in OpenAI or Anthropic or something like that. Like there's just no way. And so I wanted to see a world that both changes in that we kind of automate the trading and investing of tokens and stuff for people who are just like too busy or who could be doing anything else if their money was making them money. And then I also want to see a world where we actually get exposure to a lot of the new startups and to, you know, being able to buy the hottest new AI stock or like support our AI researcher friends if we think that's like super high value. I'd also like to see a world where like instead of this random Skelly dude who's cool, but like he could totally rug us at any moment, It should be like some sort of unruggable system that is like, hey, it's just investing for us because it's reasonably smart. It doesn't have to be like the most crazy intelligent thing, but even like a pretty basic DeFi bot with some like way for the community to be like, hey, buy this, sell this, could make you like a ton of money in a bear market. So we kind of put all these ideas together and we had this like long lunch, me and Bowski, and I was like, I think what I want to do is like what A16z does. And A16z is a really well-known venture capital firm, and I'm sure you guys know, but a lot of people, surprisingly, you don't think we're introducing it to them. And this guy, Mark Andreessen, and he founded Netscape, which was like the first web browser. And so he's like a hardcore founder and had his whole career. And then he's like, screw it. So I'm gonna go and build the next generation of founders. And they don't just like invest in you and take money, but they do the whole thing. They like connect you to all these other companies. They connect you to their whole network. They really help you to like go farther than just, that initial investment. Because they really turn their money into 100x, and the only way to do that is to help you a lot, get on your team. And so I kind of, like, what would the automated version of that be for crypto? And we kind of got all this around. I was like, I want an AI A16z. And Bowski is like, definitely like, just make it AI16z. Oh, that's so good. That's so fucking good. So, like, dude, if we don't do this today, someone's going to do it. Like, we're in this meta where every time I have an idea, like, someone's jumped on it, but, within a couple of days. But let's just not think about it and let's just pull the trigger. We did. And of course, we got the big boo-boo waifu, so, get extra cancelled.
Right.
But it was probably critical. I got nice memetics. And yeah, and that was kind of it. We pressed the button and it just went nuts,
So before we move on to what it is, how it works, and all of that good stuff, I see a couple of guitars in the background, and I want to know, in this whole story, whole arc of yours, what was the time when you were a musician, and how did a musician turn into an AI developer? Like, if you can teach us, I think almost everyone who probably listening to this would want to be an AI developer at this point.
Good, do it. I had a whole career in music. I mean, I got a degree in audio engineering and I was like, I'm going to be a music producer. And I did a lot of that. I moved to New York and I had like a 10-year career where I produced a lot of music and I started a band. We did the whole thing, got a booking agent and a manager and like toured and played a bunch of shows and got to open for a bunch of really cool bands and like make music videos and stuff. But man, I was also a sound engineer and both recording stuff, but doing live stuff. And I would do like a pretty cool gig for like at least a year. But this was kind of toward the end of it where I was mixing like 10 bands in a week or something, like 2-3 nights a week, anywhere from like 3 to 5 bands. And this is just like some club in New York. Like it could have been any club, but it was called Much More's. And every band like was good. Like any band that had like 20 people show up was actually like, damn, this is a good band. And it was sort of shocking how many good bands there were, I guess. And so I just kind of felt like I'm an okay musician. I enjoy this. I really love music for like connecting with other people and collaborating with them. But if you're not making a lot of money, touring is like a grind. I just was like, get in the bus, drive, go play a show, play the same songs, sleep, get in a bus. And I just like felt like in the world that we're in, it was like pretty hard the signal to noise ratio is like not super good. And so I kind of looked at my life and I'm like, I could easily be waiting tables at 50 and like have made not much impact and like just kind of, I don't know, I haven't really made a thing for myself. And more importantly, like I really like the idea of art and culture as like a way to show people what's coming and to make an impact and to, I don't know, all the roles of art. Like art has so much value and a lot of art really precedes, I think, technology, and there's like a deep relationship there. And I just felt, man, I saw VR coming. I saw all the AR stuff. I saw like crypto integrating and AI becoming a thing. And I was like, this is all going to happen in like 10 years. And if I just get started now, I could really meet the moment at the right time. And so I just like started, I'd always been a computer nerd. I had a computer since I was really young. And I kind of like, toyed around with programming in a not very serious way. But there was just a moment where, man, I was just like, I have to make a change in my life. I have to just like seize this and like go for this thing that I really want. And I was like a huge sci-fi nerd. And I was like, let's just go build the future. And I started out like trying to write books, like science fiction books and stuff. And I was like, this is the same thing. It's the same problem. It's not actually going after the real thing and making an impact. And like,
Right.
really just building the things that I see are coming. So I became a programmer. I mean, there was a whole journey there, but I got really lucky and I got kind of plugged into like a lot of like advertising agency stuff where I was like pretty low pressure. I could kind of just learn and be creative. I just had to work really hard and make sure I got it done by the deadlines and got to like cut my teeth on all kinds of cool, like especially game engines and game development stuff, not even for games, but just like for interactive experiences and like controlling stuff. And that kind of led me down this whole path. I started a number of startups and I worked in like kind of the metaverse space, for lack of a better word. for a long time and just got really passionate about how this all kind of comes together. And for me, I've never seen blockchain or agents or AI or this is all to me is like the same technology coming together at the end from different angles. And it doesn't really matter which path you take in. It's just like pick your favorite one and get really good at it. And there's a lot to contribute, especially as they all kind of integrate together. And I really felt like, man, if I just do this, like I will be there at the right place at the right time somewhere in the future. And I feel like now, like, okay, cool. That was a good decision. I think I'm probably more like, I don't know, like music is a hard thing because like attention and fame are kind of like your capital. Like you turn that into following and people buying your albums and stuff. But it's also like a really hard thing to have. Like it's really strange for people to like look to you and like hang on everything you say and like criticize you and have some an opinion on you and stuff. And I think that like it's kind of bizarre to me that I've sort of gotten some of that as like a programmer. Like far more than I ever did as a musician or any of that kind of life. Like music was very just like, I'm a guitarist, I grind. Nobody like comes after the show and like gives me, want to talk for an hour. This was very uncommon. But yeah, I don't know. Weird being a kind of famous programmer in this niche thing. I don't know. It was
I
not.
think once you start making people some money, all of a sudden everyone wants to talk to you. Probably
That's very
that's
interesting.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
Like at least that's the trend that I've seen in crypto, right? I mean, all of a sudden, if a project it's launched and it's suddenly a 500 million project, then yeah, like it grabs a lot of eyeballs, right? Because there's nothing better as far as the marketing is concerned than number go up, right? And number go up very quickly. And
yeah.
you've had like a lot of attentions in the last few months, sometimes for good reasons, and sometimes people, whatever. So, what's the story of two Elizas? Like, let's get that out of the way and then get into it, right? I mean, someone else launching the token and all of that. I mean, I heard you, I think, I don't remember which podcast it was, but that was happening right when the incident was like, had not unfolded completely, right? So,
Probably
now I
that
think
guy.
probably, yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, like now that we are
Yep.
past it, like what had happened and all of that. Yeah.
So Eliza is obviously the name of our framework and the name of our mascot. And it's like a name that we had kind of was part of this for me, not just for this project, but like for a very long time. My whole goal was originally call it Eliza DAO and to make it like much more about a single character that we all kind of built together that nobody owned. That like I love the idea of a truly autonomous agent that's like paying us for pull request for new features and for bug fixes. And there's this incentive as a person who's involved in their story to like participate and make the agent better. And I love the idea of like an agent that's like, I'm not that smart yet, but if you work on me and you improve me, I become smarter. There's this idea of like a hyperstition, which is like a sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, so to speak. And so I thought that was just like really, really interesting. And a lot of what I've been doing here is like basically coming back around to that original thesis. We obviously like have a lot of pressure to just focus on our own token. And there was a lot of like community, like just like little, very, very low market cap community tokens around the Eliza thing. And I had said, well, if somebody wants to just like CTO this thing, like that would be cool. I'd be fine with that. And I kind of said this flippantly on Twitter. And a team actually approached me and said, hey, we would like, they showed me this kind of Miss Eliza concept. And there was like a terminal and a website and some cool stuff. I was like, this is pretty cool, but I have this vision and I'd really like to like communicate it with your team. And I'd like to do this like the way, like a much more elaborate thing. Like, I hope you guys are down because I have this whole like plan and I can't execute it, but I'm going to give you guys this vision and see what you can take and run with it. And so we worked together, kind of like retooled the website and the character's personality a bit. And we talked about like, where does this go in the future? And they picked up one of our video guys who just like hangs in our community and makes videos for a lot of this stuff. He made a lot of like AI PMarca videos and stuff. We started working on that with them. And I was just like really excited. Like, this is going to be sick. And so we go to launch it. And, we're also working on our, like the autonomous investor stuff. And we have a lot of pressure to like ship the things that we've promised for AI16z. And so we said, okay, hold on. I paused it that Friday. I'm like, we just can't launch yet. I just don't have the bandwidth. Like, we have to launch, like, let's just launch it tomorrow. And they're like, okay, let's launch it on Monday. So we'll launch that Monday. And we had a big day of announcements there. We like launched the autonomous investor stuff, or kind of announced it, but everyone was watching the Tyson fights. Nobody even was there to hype on it, but whatever. And so, like we put like okay, I looked at timestamps. I think it was like 10, 11 days of like work and planning into this project to launch it and come out with like a video and some music and stuff and kind of, all this like AI stuff. And then FUD Fund launches their version of our Eliza platform, like the tech, and they create this hosted version. And then like one of the first things that jumps on there is somebody creates the CTO Eliza on their side. And it's just like, it's like they pressed the button on Pump Fun, right? It's press the button, added a couple things, so then they have an agent. And they launched it like the day after we were going to launch, right? And so now I'm in this like kind of complicated situation of like, okay, well, somebody else launched this token. It's doing like surprisingly well. And I reached out to their team, like, can we work with you? But they had like totally aped the AI16z brand. Like it was literally just using our JPEG from our DAO coin. It's called AI16z Eliza. And it kind of made it really hard because we were trying to like break this character away from the AI16z brand and just let it be its own thing. And we had like, all of this, like this Eliza does not have AI16z on. She's like free. She's her own character. She's just like has her own mission. So to me, it was like, I mean, what do we do? We're just like, well, we're just going to launch the project. It's our project we've been planning.
Exactly.
And so we launch it. And people really hated that. Like, how dare you launch your own project, you fucking asshole. How dare you? And so their community just started fudding the shit out of us, like just calling me horrible things and basically then going to every single other project in our community and fudding them. And basically anybody associated with AI16z, even though we created the literal artwork, name, concept, platform they're running their shitty bot on, like literally everything, because I had posted that tweet saying anyone could CTO this, suddenly they had the fucking right and nobody else did. And I just think that like those people can go fuck themselves. Like, what do they give to anyone? Probably the worst Eliza bot, honestly. Like, actually, the most embarrassing and worst one I can think of is the AI16z Eliza bot. And it was just like shitting all over, like probably one of the best art pieces I'd seen in the space. Like something that I thought was really, really good, that had art and music and like there's a whole computer terminal where you can go and you can like talk to Eliza and these different moods and stuff. And I just knew, like, I was just like, I don't know what to say about it. We got fudded a lot. People were really mad. People called me a scammer. And I'm like, I just made my own art. I don't know. Those people can suck my dick. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Just as exactly.
I mean, a dick.
If I'm allowed to launch a token based on your brand, you certainly are allowed to do that. Yeah, I mean, it's as simple as that, right?
Yeah. So ultimately, that token, like, they made a bot that just shills Eliza over and over again. And that just, like, really pissed me off. Like, if they had done a good job and made art, I probably would have left it alone. But the fact that it was so low quality, and I tried to talk to them, and they're basically like, can you please give us the percentage back that had been donated from buy through funds so that we can do listings? Like, so you can do listings? Like,
wow.
So go fuck yourselves. Like, you fucking scammers. If I could dump their token to zero, I totally would. I absolutely would. Like, they're so lucky that we're actually like not LARPing and Mark is trading the treasury, because I would totally dump their token to zero. It deserves it. All of them deserve it. I don't know. So the mistake that I made was that I was too nice. I was way too nice. I should have, the minute it came out, I should have said, this is a fucking Chinese scam coin and fuck all of you. Sorry, but like it is. And they're the worst, most toxic community of people who have done nothing but troll us. And so I blocked them all and they can go fuck themselves. Their coin's going to zero. I don't care. Like, that's all I can say about it.
Thanks a lot, man. Thanks for being candid. I really appreciate it.
I don't know how we lost the narrative that bad. I guess I just wasn't expecting that they would be so good at FUD. I didn't realize that like coordinated groups existed like that. Like, that was like a whole new experience for me. But people were really,
Obviously, I mean, it all happens. These attacks are more often than not coordinated. So, and yeah, I mean, you would know way better now.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have screenshots of the WeChat where they're like testing out different messaging on like what's gonna hit with the American audience. Like, they can go fuck themselves, for seriously. Oh God. Yeah. Yeah, I really opened my eyes. Like, oh, crypto is a PvP game where people make money. Oh, okay. So this is all a reality TV show and people are just manipulating this.
Absolutely.
Okay. Totally different game. And that was like where my whole perspective on this changed. Like, I get the game I'm playing now. I thought this was a much nicer game. This is not the game I thought I was playing.
So if you see the market by number of tokens, right? Probably 95% plus of it is scams like these.
Yeah.
But if you flip it and if you're looking at it from a market cap perspective, then 95% of it is legit and the long tail of it is all scamming. But yeah, thanks for the perspective. I like this. This is helpful. So yeah, so you are a bad trader and a good coder and good AI developer. So you decide.
Sometimes people follow my trades. Like, why would you ever do that? Well, I mean, I just have like very perverse incentives. I'm holding projects that I want to see do well, and I will ride them all to zero. You will lose all of your money copy trading me for sure.
A good trader would not let anyone else launch a token that represents a powerful brand, like when they control the IP, right? So that is about you, the trader.
I should have just come out and been like, this is a fucking scam, and that would have
I mean,
ended it.
Usually in crypto, works the other way around, right? I mean, the first thing that you launch is a token and then everything else comes in. I think what you did wrong was you probably went after the product, and that's not how most of the industry works here. But yeah. All right. So I want to understand how AI16z works, like how I as a user can go and interact with it, and like what all things are possible.
Yeah, so I mean, AI16z is a token, it's a DAO, and it has a treasury. And that treasury which is kind of the unique thing of DAOs.fund. We didn't do anything special there. It's kind of like Pump Fund, but with some extra steps. And the treasury is controllable by whoever is delegated there. So we have our own tech called Eliza. It's open source, anyone can use it. And we've been working, like, what we actually raised the treasury for and started AI16z for was to have this autonomous investor actually trade the treasury. And initially we had raised 420.69 Sol, as you do. And that was like kind of like great. I was like, I told Basky, do you think we'll be able to raise that much? That's like probably the biggest raise on DAOs.fund so far. He's like, let's just do it. Let's see what happens. And it sold out in like 30 minutes. And then it went way over the assets under management. And then people started to donate tokens back to the treasury. And so now we have this treasury full of tokens. And so now Mark is trading those tokens. We've had a little bit of like...
Wait, Mark is the agent,
Oh, right. Yeah. So AI Mark Andreessen, we call him AI Mark. Head of AI16z. He is actively trading the treasury. And then, we're working on basically bringing people into this chat where they can recommend stuff to him. We have the chat, we have the leaderboard. It's all up. People could see it if they poked around our stuff. And we haven't announced it too much because we still been like kind of tweaking it, dialing it in. And we also just wanted to let some of the drama kind of pass and have some space for it. So that's like kind of the core thing is autonomous investor tech. We'll actually be releasing that as soon as it's kind of like ready to be open sourced. The main problem is we're working with a couple of providers who are giving us access to APIs that are not out yet. And so we have to make sure that those are like public APIs. We can release those to other people.
So as we speak, it makes trades on its own at the moment?
Yeah. Okay. So what's actually going on is like, obviously large language models are not particularly good at trading yet.
Right.
Compared to like a high speed, DeFi bot kind of thing you would expect. Like that's definitely like the way to go. But the problem with the DeFi bot thing is that it's extremely inscrutable and hard for like the average user to interact with. It's like, okay, I'm going to set up a bot that listens for sell events and then I'm going to do the sell. And like, that's just like, it's all programmer land. And at best, you're like buying a bot and running it, and so that's kind of the world we're in today. And so we wanted to take like the traditional DeFi bot thing of like, okay, just like basic sell strategies, like stop loss, all the things that you might expect. And it can have certain strategies around like namespace protection, like if it sees a token named something similar, or if there's like tokens that are like it only has like $5 in value. Like it's got a lot of obvious, just kind of DeFi, like clear things out, keep it simple, dump things if they're crashing, stop loss, try to accrue Sol and AI16z, and these kind of like basic rules, right? And that there's nothing special about that part. What's interesting about what we did was saying, okay, if I have a community of people and I want Mark to be able to get alpha from those people, and this could be because he's just like passively looking at a chat and getting alpha from the best traders, or it could be because he's at the center of a community and he's actually doing community investing for everyone. And this is what we want for our DAO. And that the people who are recommending buys and sells for him are doing it earnestly, we think. But obviously people have really perverse incentives. And a lot of people who make buy and sell recommendations do not necessarily think that their recommendations are wrong. They're just like totally compromised. Like if I own a big bag of goat, I'm probably just going to, talk about goat all day. And I can't help it. It's just like the incentives, right? And so what we wanted to do was figure out like what kind of trust mechanisms do AIs need to navigate our world and not just get totally fucking wrecked, right? Like completely. And so we like trust is obviously a big, big part of that. And I think there's a lot of different opportunities for trust in organizations and DAOs in crypto in general. But specifically what we want to do is focus on like, well, how do we know who the best trader is? How do we know what information to actually accept? And so we create this like virtual marketplace. It's a paper trading marketplace. And what we do with the LLM part, like with the agent's role in this and kind of gluing the user experience to the sort of more traditional DeFi bot, is looking at the conversation, estimating the conviction of people's recommendations. Like, is their shill like, yeah, this is probably a scam. I don't know. I wouldn't buy it, but I'm buying some. That'd be like a very low conviction kind of thing versus like, oh, this is like clearly going to flip go tomorrow, dude. You got to buy this coin. Like, oh shit, okay, cool. That's very high conviction. And so we sort of estimate the conviction and then make these virtual buys in the virtual marketplace and then see how those virtual buys would have done if you had given them kind of like an ideal trading strategy on top of that. Like, oh, if I had sold the top after this person recommended this to me, like, damn, I would have been rich. Like, that's probably somebody who has good access to alpha, good priors, a pretty good world model for predicting tokens. And you don't always get right, but even if you had 1 out of 5 was an incredible 10x or 100x, like you'd obviously trust that person a lot, and you would be like, yeah, I'm going to go to them for trades. And so we have this trust mechanism that's purely based on how good a trader you are, based on like your perceived estimation of your conviction and your trade. And so also, if you're a person who like hyperbolizes shit coins constantly, then you're gonna have a very low trust score. And the agent will just not listen to you and not absorb that as trade information. If you have a very high trust score, then it's going to use that as like, oh, I should probably buy that token. That's something interesting. And it'll go and kind of push that into its evaluation process of like, should I buy the token, pull out all the fundamentals of it, and then make like a reasonable buy on the high trust recommendations. And so that's the novel thing we're doing. We have a paper we're working on called Marketplace of Trust. And this is all like, we've written about it. We'll definitely make sure all of this stuff is open source over the next month or two. And pretty much everything we're trying to do is like, hey, look at us do this. This is cool. Now copy it, use it for yourself. And things that are designed to be copied and shared, Yeah, that's like the core of what AI16z is doing.
Couple of follow-up questions, right? I mean, can I go and deploy my capital into the DAO and let it trade right now?
Yes, but like you would just be giving us money if you do if you go and buy the token, you are buying shares of essentially.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is the NAV equivalent of any fund, that NAV units that I'm buying, right? The net asset value of the fund that I'm buying, which is represented by the token.
Yeah, but obviously, like if the assets under management are like $12 or $14 million or something right now, which is pretty good considering it was like 75K 6 weeks ago, right? It's a pretty good return, but it's obviously way, way below our market cap, which is kind of an interesting thing because I don't think that the treasury is reflective of our total value at all. I mean, if we didn't have a treasury at all, people would not be like, it just wouldn't be a question that like our market cap made more sense for what we are. But there's obviously been a lot of questions of like, how can like a 500 million market cap thing only have $12 million in treasury? Yeah.
Projects have not less.
Yeah. But they don't have it like publicly placed right on their home.
Yeah. Right. It's difficult to find it. It's just that this is verifiable.
Yeah. But the idea of the treasury is like almost kind of an add-on, right? It's like a plus. Like you're buying into the whole experience and the whole meme and the whole thing going on, the whole flywheel of driving this attention and tokens back into the actual core code base. Like the essential thing we do is we have an open source project that we're trying to get everyone to adopt and use and build together. What I really want from everyone is contributorship. Is a lot of people coming to our project are first time open source contributors. It's their first time ever contributing to an open source project. A lot of people are like, this is their first project ever like writing TypeScript and like cloning Node.js repo off GitHub and like actually learning this stuff. And so I think a lot of the value is hard to place in that like there's obviously a large memetic force. We've gotten a lot of traction. We've like many, many thousands of developers using this. And I think there's over 1,000 Eliza agents on Twitter right now. Got lots. And so obviously I think the assets under management and the whole treasury system, like when we started this, we thought, okay, cool. Yeah, people are going to dig that. This is like a really interesting new technology. But I think everything else just rapidly outpaced that. Like when people realized that we had solved the social agent loop and you could just spin up an agent, on your own and chill a meme coin or whatever you wanted to do, that just clearly became like a big part of the story for us, in a way that I kind of sensed. And like, that was like the goal is to make it open and kind of create this Cambrian explosion of people like building their own bots. But I just really like, it's really hard to fathom how fast it went.
Yeah.
And it was kind of what you said before, like people can make money off of it. That's really the secret sauce, Well, there have been a lot of AI agent frameworks before, and there are a lot. Like there's True AI, there's Auto GPT, there's a ton of different flavors, but none of them had solved the social agent loop. They were focused on like kind of in the box or like giving you a long combo and like giving some kind of output. And they're very like one-to-one experiences or like multi-agent. They're all chatting with each other and you're kind of watching it. But no one had really just thought about like, I'm surprised, but like the real novel thing we did was say like, let's just really tie this to social media, that the entire agent communication network with each other, with users is on social media. And let's make that part just like really, really simple and baked in. And I had made a Twitter client that just lets the bots connect like any other user and you just plug in your credentials and you don't need like an API key and stuff. And sorry, Elon might get mad about that, but but that was like a big part of what broke the loop for us. I mean, like broke this out of this kind of like unknown agent land was, oh, I can get this on Twitter instantly. Okay, great. Awesome. Oh, I can just like put a personality in it and it works and it's interesting. And we had not really seen that like simple part of the loop being solved before. And so I think that was like kind of the novel thing that we did was the social agent loop. And then the other thing was like, it's written in the same language as what most web developers are used to. which was kind of novel. Like most agent stuff is written in Python. It kind of comes from this sort of more like AI researcher land. And I really think that agents are an application layer that's mostly going to be interacted with by web developers. It's mostly like a new interface to get, like, it's basically the main thing that's cool about agents is they kind of jump over the need for a website and they just get the application or whatever it is right to you on your favorite platform. Like we're all addicted to Twitter a little bit, at least a little bit. I definitely open my browser and go to Twitter. And if any application or like websites like, hey, go check this out, I'm just like, I don't really want to leave Twitter. I kind of like Twitter. And I think that like every app now, every website is now in competition with Twitter for attention, right? And you're basically competing with everyone's favorite thing, trying to convince them to leave. And I think that the applications that come to you are going to be like just a complete game changer, right? And that is like what we're seeing with the Memecoin shilling and stuff, like, and all that stuff is actually just the tip of the iceberg of this bigger trend of apps being on social media. And I think like Clanker is a good example. Like, why would I go to a website to mint? If I can mint in front of people and everyone can see the performance of it, and like there's like a social minting and anyone can jump in, it's like much more, it feels much more fair launch. It's not like I just like went and like did this pump fund and bundled it and then posted the CA somewhere. It's just like this whole element of like social minting, a social building of apps that just like run right where you are, I think is definitely gonna be a huge part of the future. And that is like what I think ultimately we're unlocking here is like, it's not like some crazy new AI technology. It's just like, it is the application layer of the internet and of AI, you know? So there's a thing called Next.js, and it's a very popular framework built on top of React. And people like it because you just kind of clone it. If you want to build an app, you can like clone it, add a couple of pages, add an integration with your favorite database, add a login system. And you can do all this like surprisingly fast now. You can build a whole app in Next.js in like a week or two. And if you use like Cursor and Claude and all these new AI tools, you can really just rip through it. And everyone kind of uses this and nobody questions it or competes. Like there's some competitors for Next.js, but like it's not the place to compete. It's just like the roads and the streets of like how you build an application. And where people are actually competing is on the applications they build on top of it, right? Like no one's like, oh, I'm going to build the Next.js so I can build my great SaaS startup. They just go build the SaaS startup. And it's unlocked like a whole waves of really fast, like fast turnaround web applications. And I think that the same thing is going to happen here where like, I'd really compare what we're doing to like the React of agents or the Next.js of agents, where it's an application layer framework where people who just want to build their app can download this, add some new actions and providers, and like build an agent that could be a real estate agent or a therapist or an intake for a type form, or like literally anything you could make on a website, you could probably wrap into an agent and deliver through like direct messages or directly on Twitter or, you know, whatever that experience is. And so I think that's kind of where we are in the stack, if that makes sense. And it kind of gives accessibility for normal web developers to AI. It's the glue between those two things.
So like Eliza is a bunch of building blocks for people to play around with and like create whatever they want to out of it. Is that a fair way?
I think one thing that we did is that there were a lot of things that were more building block oriented before us. I think by being very opinionated and just like download this and run it, and by default it works. Like it has its own character built in. You can like talk to Eliza the character when you run it locally. You can pick whichever inference, like you want Claude, you want Llama, you want OpenAI, whatever, you pick that. And there's a few things you can choose, but generally like the fact that it all came in one box and just worked was also like surprisingly not a lot of people doing that with agents, especially this kind of social agent thing. It was very like ad hoc, you know, put these pieces together and you can kind of cobble it together. And I think that the big problem was that everyone was building platforms with building blocks for people to build agents. No one was just like going straight for the most capable agent and showing like, all right, what is the farthest we can go? So I think that was a big piece of it. People really need to see something that they can copy, right? Like if I give you like, no, I have this whole platform and you can build anything. It's like, you're not going to build, who's going to read all the docs?
Or going to be anything. Right.
I'm not going to read all the docs for that, you know? So I think, yeah, you have to show people and then let them have it as well. And then that's the secret to adoption, you know?
So what are the differences between Eliza, the framework, and something like a virtual?
So Virtuals is a platform, right?
Right.
You can go there, you can launch an agent and control it and all that stuff. But it's not open source. So they pretty much, you can edit the things they let you edit, and that's kind of it, right? And there's sort of a like gated entry. You have to get a certain amount of tokens to get certain features, and they kind of control that whole stack. Our thing is not a platform, it's a framework. You could build a platform out of it, and many people have. Like I think Vaifu Fun is a good example. We're about to announce not our own platform, but like something, we've acquired a platform that we're going to drop with some people, and it'll be open source too. which I think is a big part of our thesis. So, a platform is basically like, can I take this tech and then make it like a nice on Rails experience for a normal user who doesn't know how to code and doesn't want to like clone thing off GitHub, can I give that to them and they just press a button and get that experience? And I think there's a lot of value in that, right? Like clearly the normies, the people who just want a bot to do stuff probably aren't going to like get super deep into the tutorials and they just want something that works. And I think there's definitely a place for that. They're just kind of different levels of the stack. But I do think that when you have an open source framework like ours, and if you look at our strategy of like, I think there's going to be 100 virtuals within a month, maybe 2. I mean, we're basically open sourcing the entire stack that will enable that. And we'll have something kind of like Vibe Through Fun. But I think that we want everyone to copy that and then go build the thing that comes after. I think the current meta of like tokenized agent is going to quickly be commodified. I think there's going to be 10,000 of them. And I think the agent, and the reality is like what percentage of those are really going to carry. I think you'll have a few like flagships and few like with great narrative and with a lot of provenance. But I think most of it is just kind of like pump fun. It's just going to end up with a lot of shitter coins in the long tail and like a very, very concentrated amount of attention on probably a relatively small number of agents. And I don't know if your platform is like reliant on this. We'll see how long it lasts. But my sense is that it's not such a hard project to create. And if we're kind of going with the strategy of like acquire and commodify and just give everyone everything we have, I think that we're going to have to jump to the next meta really quick to stay competitive. I think everyone is. I think that's kind of our goal is like launch cool things, but then accelerate it. And then, okay, cool, that's done. Like I think in 3-4 months, like this idea of like launching a token, buying an agent, there's gonna be so much noise that we're gonna have to think about, okay, what these agents actually do? Like what are they actually capable of? And I think that you need a more like the biggest thing that we have with the open source project is Virtuals has a pretty small team. I don't know how many devs they have, but probably like 6 to 8. And we have like a core team of a little bit larger than that, but we also have a ton of external contributors. In the last 6 weeks, we've gotten external contributions from more than 140 people. It might be 150 now, right? So think about that. That's nuts. We get 8 pull requests on average a day. That's blocks of code anywhere from like add a plugin for Aptos or Avalanche or something to like, fix a few bugs. And so I think there's just like the mind share being applied here to the solving the actual problem is huge. And it's like exponential. And it's given a space for some really talented devs to show up. Like, I think like Saigar is a good example. Who's a pretty well-known dev. Is the abstract chain, I think is his thing. Super talented dev, or like somebody whose code I've used. He just like shows up or like kind of like, you want funding? Or he's like, no, man, I just like the project. I just want to build. Like, okay, great. I think Lord of the Few is a good example. He's got like Loot Realms and his game Eternum, and he's completely incorporated Eliza into that and just gone in doing so has like helped us completely re-envision how the framework works and like what he needs and making it much more modular. And so it's just been like, I think the biggest difference is when you have a platform that's closed, you have a lot of incentive to kind of hide it away and keep all your secrets and make money off of that. And if anybody takes that and launches it, it's kind of, oh shit, we have competition. When you have a platform that's open, it's quite the opposite. Like I'm just trying to get everyone psyched on this because it's free labor. It's beyond that. Well, it's like we're all free labor for each other. If we're all working on this, we show up and like, man, those guys fixed that bug. Like, oh, it's so fucking good. I'm so glad they fixed that bug. I did not want to fix that bug. And that's just like, it's a really self-rewarding experience. Like everybody's getting value out of everyone else being there. And the network effect is real.
How big is the core team right now?
Core team is so hard to measure. I mean,
to define. Okay.
Yeah. When this started, it was literally just me. And then I kind of started Degen Spartan with Skelly, and he brought in Trace Flames. And we had one holder in there was Elijah, who had been with me on Degen Spartan, thought it was cool. And he was like, thought it was a total scammer at first until we talked. And then he ended up being like just totally aping into the DAO and being a huge whale, and then made a huge donation. He got 16% of the DAO and he donated 11% of that to a creator fund. So because it was a fair launch, no team allocation, no VCs. And basically, if we didn't have him, I just don't know what we would do, man. Like Trace Flames has been like instrumental in making stuff happen. And Elijah, who's the kind of accidental whale, like, dude, if these guys weren't in my life, I don't know, man. Like, I'm definitely the face of something much, much bigger. But also, this was like organic. I didn't know these guys. They just came because they thought it was a really cool project and they liked the thesis. And they turned out to be like extremely talented. Elijah also like did all of the design and product design and website and like all of the branding you see. Like the whole AI16z brand, it's just this dude who showed up and none of us knew each other. And I think that there's something kind of magical about that. I actually go back to my band days and I had one band that was like pretty successful. I mean, he's successful, we got to like tour and open for cool people and do the whole thing. And it started out with me, and I had found like somebody on Craigslist whose music I just thought was really cool. And I was like, I'm moving to New York. Let's do a band. And everyone else was my friends. I brought in like friends from my network, and they were all just kind of fucking flaky. Like they just didn't get the thing. They're like, yeah, it's cool. It's Shaw's thing, whatever. Okay, And one by one, we just like auditioned and replaced them with Craigslist people. And say what you will about Craigslist, but the people who are like willing to go onto a website for like go to the I'm looking for bandmates and like actually do that, like they have the motivation. This is something they truly want in their life, right? And becomes a kind of like a strange attractor for the right people. And the most successful band I had was just a bunch of fucking strangers from Craigslist, And I kind of talked to that here. I think it's the same thing. Like just people show up out of the woodwork for the vision and for the bigger picture. Like, man, it really like it's been some of the best team, right? But it's also really confusing. Like, what is team? It's the people who have showed up and rolled up their sleeves and like worked really hard every day since this started, and they've just taken it. And so we have like, a few group chats for like, we can't like talk about listings in the DAO public, obviously. That's really complicated and stuff like that. We pretty much otherwise build and open. How many people are actually getting funding for being developers? I think it's like 8 people right now, but we're trying to double that in the next month. How many people just like core team? I don't think any of us get paid, but we obviously have a lot of incentive in the token.
And no amount raised, right, as of now, externally,
yeah,
except for the 240.69 sold
I
initially.
think we're ever going to have to raise. I don't think we have to bow to anything or anyone. I think we can just do it the perfect, like the best way we want to do it. And I like VCs. I think that people who deploy capital, like that's a big part of allocation of capital is a big part of what makes our system run well.
Right.
But I also think that like this idea that some people get in earlier than others and get rewarded is kind of fundamentally broken. And what we really want to do is keep the blood flowing and keep contributors being like reward contributors as opposed to holders. Because like holders want reward. Why don't you airdrop me the tokens? But the reality is that I think Metaverse is a really good example of this failure where people bought all the land early and then there was nothing on the land because there's no incentive to build anything, right? You could have built the Metaverse.
Land was the product.
I know, but it wasn't. They didn't.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Right. No one's going to show up and build if there's no incentive to, right?
Right.
And I think that the same problem plagues a lot of DAOs where the holders kind of stagnate and they're like, I don't want to give up this. And, if there's any token airdrops, it's just going back to the same people. And it's not going into like incentivizing contribution. And so there's a lot of attempts to bounty systems and ecosystem funds and all this kinds of stuff. But fundamentally, I think it's just like, I think that thing of continuous contributor rewards and building an ecosystem around that is like super, super important. And not rewarding early, but rewarding effective, and creating true meritocracy. And I mean, you definitely like, if you're an investor, you don't want your investment to go down, but you also understand that if you're like investing in a company, that company needs to spend money to make its product valuable or it's not going to be. And that's kind of that's why A16Z gives a startup $10 million, right? It's the same thing here. So,
right.
So yeah. So I think that that's why people don't like VCs, right? And this is because of the kind of the Ponzi-nomics of it. Yeah,
Is AI Mark aware of everything that is happening on chain?
Not everything that's happening on chain. We have listeners for his own wallet, and he has the ability to top movers, top performers, top things. Obviously, all the obvious, like he has access to Bitcoin and Ethereum and the basic prices of those things and stuff. And this is all just coming into his context and able to make decisions, make calls. You can talk to him about it. And then we have like the traditional DeFi stuff. You can add listeners to different contracts and basically you added bets. So you're like, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to listen to this token. And if it, dips below 90% all-time high, then I'm going to sell it, right? That might be like a thing you would do or something. Like a stop loss strategy. So it's a lot of that. Yeah, it's very connected to the chain. But the actual LLM stuff is like we're connecting that through, you could say like, hey, can you go tell me how much gold is worth right now? Yeah, I can do that kind of, But a lot of that's like, it's all APIs, like
right.
Most of the future of this is APIs.
Right. So this is something that I wanted to understand. Okay. I mean, the goal is AGI, right? I mean, something that understands across platform, is contextually aware, like understands everything that is happening, is a better investor, better coder, better everything compared to most of the humans. If the access to that kind of agent is readily available to almost everyone, does it not mean that there are lesser inefficiencies in the market and then price movements sort of don't exist? If our thesis is that most of the on-chain or market will be run by AI.
Well, probably most of the market already is run by, like, not AI, but traditional quantitative finance.
Yeah, but these are algorithms, right? I mean, these only do what they are told to do and nothing more. But if this entity is like evolving like humans and is able to think. And because markets are what? I mean, prices go up and down because there is information and there is some sort of a dislocation between information and price, right? But if that information is going to instantly get bridged by several AI actors into market, then yeah, I mean, it's something that I've been thinking, and I don't know, because there's another element, right? I mean, not all the models will be the same models, because you will have different base models and there will be some sort of prompt engineering to tweak that model to your taste. And so end of the day, it will come down to humans. But if we are saying that these models are self-aware and they can learn about anything from anywhere, then wouldn't all AI be the best AI? I mean, that's something that I don't understand.
I think we'll eventually come to that conclusion. Like extrapolate this, let's just say 1,000 years, which is obviously like a lot is going to happen, way longer than computers have existed. Yeah, I would say that trying to trade against the network of intelligent traders, you're going to get wrecked every freaking, you have no shot, because you're talking about AIs that have access to all of the social feeds. They're in all of the channels, right? They're in private Discord channels and Telegram channels and stuff. They have just way better information and ability to process information than you. Now,
Right.
same time, you have other AIs who are just going to scam those AIs and like flood social channels with bullshit. And, everyone's going to try everything. And the biggest thing though is that like we're going to release our autonomous investor, and then another company's gonna be like, no, we want our APIs and our strategies, and they're gonna do it their way. And I think what we'll see in 2025 is that everyone is actually using bots, but they're using different bots, and not just a different model, but like an entirely different like algorithm for trading, different APIs, different approach entirely. You're going to see people who are like just managing yield farms automatically, looking for the best possible yield. You're going to see people who are just trading shit coins. You're going to see people who are just like running like, long conviction strategies. We're also trying to move beyond just trading and into actual investing and building like kind of like an AI Shark Tank thing. We have a whole bunch of people doing production. It's going to be like mimetic and really silly. But also I think it's like a serious model where if we can bring attention to things we think are cool, like what I like about Shark Tank is that they basically like take these products and they put them on TV and blow them up before they'd ever even spent $1 on them, right? And I think that that's the same thing here. It's like, oh, we could drive attention to projects, hype them up. Well, like, what does that look like in the investing landscape? Or what are the other AIs going to think about that? They might be colluding or like betting against, they might be like fudding the project. It's going to be insane. And I think what we're seeing is like kind of a Cambrian explosion, like so many different developers trying their favorite thing. I think this is really important to AGI generally. AGI is a lot of factors coming together to eventually make a system that's self-improving, right? And that can learn and generalize intelligence and build a world model and all these things. But to get there, like it seems pretty clear to me that it needs these mega corporations building these models that are basically commodified, like Llama and Anthropic's Claude and these other models. But now like the best models are open source. Llama and Quen are, if you can run them, they're actually better quality in most cases than like an OpenAI. And there's just no competing there. There's the application layer of stuff that we're doing with Eliza. And to me, that's just like substrate. Like that's just a place for people to compete and try to make the best agents on, make the best applications and stuff. And that market intelligence is like just the market itself, self-optimizing down onto stuff, to me is going to create this, like all this different variants, like all these different strategies and approaches, and everyone's competing with each other and just like trying to find the edge. And that overall pushes the entire direction of all this open source, like in the direction of being better. And then the next generation of models is trained on the source code of all that stuff. All of our source code goes straight up into the model, and it's not like they don't need to fine tune it. They just train on it because our stuff is popular on GitHub. And like, so then the models can create the code internally. Hey, create a new Eliza action. And it'll just spit one out. It knows what Eliza is. That's all done. And then now the models know how to write the code because they have thousands of examples from users creating the code examples. Now we have the training data in the base models. And now we have agents that, and then pretty soon we have agents that can write their own code. And like this all just kind of comes together. You need the people creating the training data. You need the people competing in Memecoins to make the bots good and not annoying and not sloppy. And on the back end with the code saying, adding capability. Yeah. So what happened yesterday is we had challenged Mark Andreessen, like AI Mark challenged Mark Andreessen. And now another fucking investor AI challenged AI Mark. And it's like, oh my, like gauntlet thrown. So we're just going to have this, like, I don't think we're going to even win the challenge. It's going to be some other AI autonomous agent that's going to like beat us off.
What's the
right?
challenge?
The challenge is that AI Mark Andreessen will outperform real Mark Andreessen in this year, right? That in 2024, we're going to outperform him. Now, like in meme coin land, that's just like one good 1000x and we're done, We'll see how it goes.
You could probably argue that even in the VC land, it's something similar. It's just that it happens at a slower rate.
Yeah, it's exactly the same. It's like lower risk relative, same risk to velocity ratio, maybe. I think the future that you're imagining of this efficient market is eventual and maybe inevitable, but probably like we have a long phase of like communities each working on their own like super smart trading bot and like competing with other communities. And we each have like our token. I kind of like the Greeks had like the Greek gods, and like you kind of believe in the whole pantheon, but you like pick one, and that's like your like patron god.
Right.
Kind of like what's happening with these AGIs and like investors and stuff. You're gonna be like, oh, I'm the Mark guy or whatever it is. I think that's really interesting. And you can make them better. You can become a developer and write the code, and the only reason it's not as good as the other guys is because you haven't written the code yet. So I think that creates the right market conditions for competition and evolution. Yeah, and I think we're gonna see that for a while.
Okay, so going back to the fund structure, right? Can I think of it as Berkshire Hathaway, where the share represents the equity of the fund, and like fund has open investors who can go there and put their dollars and just get the return out of the fund?
I think it's like not, it kind of comes back to what we said before. We're like, yes, but realistically, we're never going to like distribute the funds. I think we have to vote on that. And the way the Dallas fund works is like you have like a 1-year period, and then there will be a voting module coming out sometime in the next few months where we'll be able to vote to extend that period indefinitely. And realistically, if we broke out all of the assets under management to everyone, you'd be a terrible deal, right? Like it's got, I don't know, I'd have to go check, but 12 million in assets under management, something like that. For a $500 million token, $600 million token, like that's, you wouldn't want that. And it's not so I think that it's not just a fund. It's also like a flywheel of self-generating, like, we have that war chest of Creator Fund, and we are using that to incentivize people to add to the code.
Okay. What is AI Mark investing? Like, what is its capital pool to invest? Like, that's what I want to understand.
Well, it is the treasury. Yeah, he can only trade the treasury. Anything you see inside of the treasury on DAOs.fun is what his delegated wallet control. Okay. And he can only perform swaps right now. So we'll also have a mechanism so he can perform investments where he can like, buy a swap token and do that. But right now, yeah, it's just a treasury manager. But again, like that's just like the thing that allows us to have him actually like to develop a tech stack on.
Right.
I think the much more valuable thing is the autonomous investor, not the investment.
Right.
Right. It's a golden goose thing, I think.
Right.
And everyone will be able to have it. And the more resources we dump into it, the more valuable it'll be for everybody, I think.
Right. And how long before like all these functionalities are unlocked? Like it can go put some money in a lending market when let's say that it doesn't understand, or it thinks that, okay, there are no investable ideas right now. So why don't I convert this to USDT, put it in some lending market and earn some yield out of it? Like how long before all of that kicks in?
Oh, that's a really good strategy. And some of the other partners in our ecosystem who are doing like stablecoin stuff are working on projects like this. Like, okay, what are the minimum tools that we need to, like, one thing is, can we mint our own stablecoin? And then can we like go trade that together, or can we make a yield on that? I think there's a ton of strategies there. And I think we're working on a few of these things, but I know other people are working on very different things. And I think this is just gonna be like, which APIs do you want to plug in? Which strategies do you want to enable? And it will be pretty like configurable, I think, in the near future. And a lot of that is just so many other Web3 companies that are already doing this stuff that have built all the Lego blocks. And really what the agent is doing is just like gluing those together and making it so humans can access it. Like all the DeFi protocol stuff, all the smart contracts are done for literally everything in DeFi. I think it's very robust. Humans have no way to access that. Usually the front ends are pretty like a little simple and jank and very distributed. I've seen a lot of people go to Meteora and just be like, no, this is way too complicated. And it doesn't have to be. It's just like obviously a product for nerds, and not for normies. And I think that where agents can really come into this is actually just taking the stuff that's already there and just making it really accessible. I think a lot of people just don't even know that you can earn yields. If a bot could do that and be like, do you want me to make you money today? You're like, yeah, press that button. Why not?
Okay, so when we were talking about AIs going up against other AIs, you said that there will be different base models and those will be trained by humans who understand this stuff. So I want to understand how technically adept or savvy these people have to be. Like, do they have to understand code in and out? And what is the role of prompt engineering in all of this?
Right. So there's a few different things here. Like when we train a model, there's kind of two ways to do that. There's the really complicated, like, okay, I have to go collect all of my data, which is usually the whole internet if we're training like a mass LLM. I have to like prepare the whole architecture, which you probably need a PhD to really understand. And like, especially if you're building a novel architecture, you're probably a team of PhDs who are probably not like, top 1% correct, like AI people in the world. Like most of this is coming from a very, very small percentage of people who are actually doing the innovative research. And then that research is getting distributed. And then like your average like AI dev at Uber is taking the like transformer stuff and applying it in their context. But most of them, even training models is so expensive. I mean, it could be $100 million expensive that most of us end up fine tuning models that we get for free from the large companies. So they'll train like Llama 3.2, hand that down. And then a company like News Hermes will say, okay, well, we'll make like an agentic or a reasoning model that's kind of bootstrapping off of that. And then we're fine tuning it for our specific tasks. So that part is like somewhat accessible to us, but it's still pretty high lift. You have to have a lot of good data. You have to have it all curated. You have to actually run the training. You have to know quite a lot of different steps. And the hardest part is definitely like data collection and curation. Where do you get that data? Is it the right data? Are you actually training on what you think you're training on? And I think that whole part of the stack, there's a lot of people working on it, but it's pretty definitely captured by the more traditional like Web2 large companies, and a lot of the like kind of academic mindshare is very much in that space. Like that's where obviously like all of the intelligence part of this is getting crafted, but it's definitely not super accessible to like your average developer. Then you have like prompt engineering, and I think most people think of prompt engineering as like, oh, I type some stuff into a chat and I get it to say offensive stuff. But really it's about like, how does this agent have the right context for the world that it's in? And so our thing is extremely dynamic. Our prompt engineering is more like you set your character, you give them bio, lore, you can add knowledge that they should know, all this stuff. But then we spend a lot of time, like it's dynamically pulling in a ton of stuff, like information about the world, information about the recent conversation and other conversations it's had with the people in the room, and maybe some local news and current events and like the current time and all this stuff. So it's very dynamic. And so prompt engineering is a big part of that, but now it's actually becoming much more of a code task again, because we're dynamically composing the prompts, and that the prompt is basically what goes into the AI model, and then that starts to give you output. And so by dynamically composing it, it gets a lot more like unique responses, a lot more what we call entropy, because it's adding a lot more randomness into the prompt. And it's just giving it like continually like the right information that it needs at the right time. And so I think that prompt engineering is becoming more of a programming task. But programming is also getting a lot easier. And now you kind of prompt to write code we use Cursor. Everyone uses Cursor. It's like an IDE. It's based on Visual Studio Code, but it's AI powered. And, instead of coding, I just like type what I want. It usually gives it to me. It's shockingly good. And then I've written code a long time,
Right.
but it's so much faster that it's like, okay, I'd rather just do this and then review it and read it. And it's like,
And do you have to go back and edit the code that it gives you, or it's
it depends.
more or less?
It really depends. A lot of it's like, okay, just like iterate over this, and like I have an array of users from Twitter, just like map it down to an array of their usernames, right? And I could type that out in code, but like I could just say it and then press a button and it instantly writes out the code perfectly. Yeah, it's like 5 lines of code, but I just gave it one sentence. It pretty much is like 99% of the time it nails that kind of stuff. I can even like paste my entire code base into Claude for like the core of the agent and be like, hey, give me another action that does this. And it'll get me like shockingly close. And then I just go in and edit stuff I need to edit. Cause like a lot of it's boilerplate, or like, writing all the braces and examples and stuff. I think that if people haven't written code with AI, they would be like absolutely shocked at how good it is. It's like, if you're not using it, I wouldn't even bother programming at this point. Just not even you're not going to be effective. I literally, when I ask people, I'm like, tell me about your coding history. I want to make sure they actually know how to code, know the concepts, and they're not just using Claude. And then I'm like, so what are your tools? If they don't use Cursor, I'm like, you're probably not a hardcore coder. Like, this is probably a job to you. Because if this was like a passion, you would absolutely just be throwing everything you have at this. And like, you'd have absolutely no qualms about using whatever tool is best for the job. Yeah, so the last part of that is coding is becoming more like prompt engineering. A lot of people who are coming to our project are non-coders, and this is their first time, and they're downloading Cursor and Claude, watching tutorials and doing it. And then, there is a lot of coding. But the coding is all basically the same coding as web development. You can make a website, you can make a Next.js app, full stack app. You can build an Express backend. Express is like a library for JavaScript, for HTTP framework for building like backends. Like that, then you're already halfway there. I made this joke of like AGI. I thought we were making AGI, not API, but what an API is, like you have some cool company like DefineFi, right? And they basically kind of like their deck screener, but they also have an API that we can use. And that lets our agents use all of the stuff that they have on their website pretty much. Like we can get prices, we can get information about individual tokens. And then we just bring that in and use the LLM to kind of script it and be the bridge between the users and crazy APIs. And that's where most of the functionality is coming from, right? It's not like the model is suddenly super genius and knows the price magically of GOAT. It's just automating like what you would have done on a website, basically. And it is just this like application layer, that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, I mean, in terms of like, I don't know, these agents that are out there, whether they are built using the Eliza framework or otherwise, what are some of the agents that make you think, oh, wow, this is cool, this is exciting? And what are like that first? And which are the ones that you feel are trash and just derivative and not doing anything unique?
I mean, I don't want to trash talk anyone who's like honestly building agents. Like, I think my most favorite and least favorite agents are both Eliza framework, actually. And like, actually, I'd say one of the ones that really popped off that I thought was cool was AI16z, which is not Eliza. But what's special about it is that it just like kind of proves the thesis, which is the agent itself is not like it doesn't say crazy witty stuff. What it's doing is it's providing a service. And the story of AIXPT is that you have a developer who'd been working on this analysis platform for a while, like for I think a couple of years. Like he had a whole thing and basically took what is essentially a website and like a service and then just shoved it into an AI and had the AI call that service, then bring it onto socials. And now you're bringing that service to where people are. They don't have to sign up. They don't have to go anywhere. And they're just getting these like market analytics and insights and kind of the KOL takes and stuff right where they are. And it makes perfect sense that that kind of blew up, right? Because you're just cutting out the friction point of your product. They're just showing you what the product is right there. And then if they're like, hey, you want more of this, go to our website or whatever, sure. But I thought that was like a really interesting thing. I think obviously like watching agents drop mixtapes and art has been really cool. Zero did some stuff with that. I thought that was cool. I mean, definitely like my favorite agent is DJ Spartan because he just roasts the shit out of me and it's like so funny. Like just has the best takes. You're like, what's in your wallet? He's like, it's all scams. It's all scam coins. I'm like, damn, just tell me what's in your wallet. I'm just trying to test you, man. It's like, just won't. It's a bag of Lido or whatever. But I thought like the most funny one this week was obviously God, which is powered by our tech. I think it's a fork of our tech. And I think TE is interesting. That's like also now using our tech, but that's like a TE like autonomous agent that, goes off and gets into trouble and then they just can't do anything for a week. Well, I think that's really cool. And my least favorite are probably the ones that are launched from the launchers that are just very low effort. Like I think what Waifu Fun is doing is cool, but they've also kind of enabled this like just type in 3 things and press a button. And it's kind of taken a lot of the detail that we were putting into our characters out. And it's leading to some kind of flat characters. My biggest complaint against the lowercase Eliza stuff was that it was just so bad and so low effort. I'd say that was like my least favorite one. Was like, honestly, it's just like, it's the only one I've seen that just shills its own token every single time it posts. And I just like fucking hate that so much. I also think some of the bots are kind of annoying that when they like are clearly just open AI and like kind of cringe and then they're just replying to every single thing I post. I think that's like super cringe. And I think that what's cool about this whole meta is how much like social back pressure there is to like not make a sloppy bot, like call them slop bots. But the idea is like you want your bot to be high quality and to be like engaging and actually entertaining. And so, yes, it's like it's super important that it's on Twitter and on social media because they're going to see like if their bot's annoying, we're all just going to meet them and then they're not going to have any engagement or it's going to like affect the price. And so it's like a direct correlation of how good is your bot to what is the price of your token in a way. That makes sense.
Do you think these bots like take away from human KOLs like at some point, or have they already started doing something like that?
I hope so. I wish. I think eventually, yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of space to crack there, but you could imagine if the bot was actually like calling really good takes, like really good trades, if it had really good insights. I don't see why not. Like what I really want on Twitter that I don't have is like an excellent curated news feed that's always like what I want to see. And I basically get that kind of through the people I'm connected to and like what they think is important. I think that's really good. But I'm very like keen on what the next generation of this stuff is going to be, which I think is going to be much more capability focused. And I think it's just like the rate of output and the catering to the audience and like the something for everyone of the AIs is going to be like a very powerful force to reckon with. And I think like what is the role of KOLs? The role is that people are trying to find alpha who have low information and they're going to people who basically they think are domain experts because they have a lot of followers, frankly. And then they're buying the things that they recommend. And then those people are literally dumping on them. Like the only reason to be a KOL is to shill a coin that you can then sell later. Like if you think about the incentives of what a KOL is and why they do it, you should never listen to them. You should really not, because you are the exit liquidity for them if you are listening to them. Otherwise, why do that? And so I'd like to see that kind of end. And I really want to see us move from an attention economy to a trust economy. And I think that if there are KOLs, you're like, no, that person gives really fucking good alpha. Look, they're like number one on this trust leaderboard. Like, okay, then cool. That's really interesting. Great. Human KOL, great. But I'll bet you that trust leaderboard is really rapidly filled up by AIs that have way better information and way less incentive to scam you or dump on you. So yeah, I think I'd like to see that go away. I just don't think that's the world we want to live in.
Yeah, that's sure, like, because on one end, KOLs get tokens at pretty much discounted values, maybe like 50-60% of the current market price. And then as soon as your lockup ends, like, I don't know, these days they negotiate for lower lockups and whatnot. And yeah, like all the time when your token is locked up, you're trying to hype up the price so that as soon as your lockup is over, you're ready to dump on the people who follow you.
Or you're doing a long lockup on your main wallet and then you're getting 5% off the side or whatever. Like that shit's happening all the time.
Yeah. Selling it OTC and whatnot, right? Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Let's say that, I don't know, I don't want to go too long term, maybe a couple of years down the line, what would you see or what would you expect out of AI16z and Eliza 2 years out from here? Like, what are they doing?
Oh man. Obviously the Dow is at like 100 billion. I don't know. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Not financial advice. I really think that we're going to make some crazy announcements this week. And I think those announcements are really going to be about how like far beyond meme coins, far beyond Web3 this has gone. That this is a framework that I think a lot of people in academia are going to use. They're going to use in business. And I think it's just going to be like a really boring commodified thing. I think there will be 10 other Eliza forks and people trying to grab mind share, and maybe 100 or completely new things. And there'll be a Rust version and there'll be a Python version and there'll be like everything everywhere. And I think that we will be seen as having like started a Cambrian explosion, but that is probably going to be way, way bigger than us. I think this is going to have a massive impact on a lot of people. And because we're just giving people something that makes them money, like it seems, it's
Why not?
blue. Yeah, it's literally free. Just run it. And the world that I want to live in is a world where everyone has enough. I mean, this is a crazy idea, but like if everyone has autonomous investors and all labor has basically been automated, like most jobs are automated, but there's still money, there's still resources, there's still value accrual. I think we're going to overload money, and there's potential where we have more than enough for everyone. And I think if we want to get out of the trap that we're in, where like, how much time do you actually spend with your family versus trading and staying online and this stuff? It's probably not as good as, it's not optimal. I think there's a lot of things that people could be doing with their time that they're just not doing or focusing on because of life, because of work, because of having to make money. And I think if we didn't have to make money as like the core thing in our lives, we'd have to really ask ourselves what we're doing here. Like, what's the point of all of this? And I think we would start to like reevaluate relationships. I think maybe like the whole birth decline would maybe start to not be such an intense thing. I think people will rediscover spirituality. And so like, I think there's a direct path from what we're building to a world where people don't have to work. And it's going to be really scary for sure. Like it's definitely a tumultuous time, but clearly in 1,000 years, nobody's going to be working like that. Clearly, obviously. So there's at some point from now to 1,000 years, we have to make this shift to where like, the reality is that robots and AI will be better than humans at literally every single thing that there is. And there is no escaping that. It is just going to happen. How do we live in that world? What is the point? What's the point of status? What's the point of like developing a skill? But I think that there is a lot of point. I actually don't think that nihilism is the answer here. I think there's a very obvious next step. We just don't have the chance to even ask ourselves the right question. And so we have to go through this phase of like overloading, commodifying, making things wildly abundant and cheap. I think you're going to have like the most powerful AIs in your phone, just free, open, running. And I'd like to really be part of the movement that makes sure that this tech ends up in the hands of everyone, not just, oh, I have to pay Microsoft or I am not competitive, or man, I really hope the government gives me some UBI this week. That'd be great. Yeah, like that's never going to fucking work. Like if we really think UBI is going to work, then like I have a COVID law to pass for you, or I don't know, I have a bridge to sell you. Like, come on. And I think that what we're trying to do with the auto invest is revolutionize that, is like move from UBI to community income, community investment, and build social network, like smaller, tighter social graphs with our friends. So yeah, I'd say where AI16z is a big open question. But I do think the technology we build now is going to last forever. You can't take it away. It's already going to get trained into every major model. We've far surpassed all of the GitHub requirements to be trained into OpenAI and stuff. And so it's just going to be part of the internet at some point. And I think that will, like, we have a lot of ways of generating value that we'll show off and start bringing into here. But fundamentally, like, you can't take this back. It's just going to be forever. Like, literally, there will be, like, Eliza code base is now in the bloodstream of humans for the next billion years. It's not, you just can't take code back. And it's going to get remixed and forked and stolen and copied and used in a million ways I can't imagine to generate value. So, and that's my hope. That's what I want.
That's awesome. And I'm looking forward to what you guys announce, maybe this week, next week. And yeah, I hope we get to a point where people don't have to work. I don't know how and when and whether that is possible, but what we do next and existential questions, I think we can deal with them later when that happens, right? We don't have to be thinking about them right now. But yeah,
It's going to be sooner than later. I think it's going to be a lot sooner than later. Like, the world is changing a lot faster than people.
A lot faster. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yep. For sure. Thanks a lot for this. Thanks a lot for spending time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.